Yes, indeed, and we've got Ebumolu Adegboruwa, a legal practitioner, here with us. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Help me make sense of this. First of all, I did ask Emmanuel about kidnapping. He did say, cultism, that they are insurrection by extension. And so I've checked insurrection here, meaning a violent uprising against an authority in government or government. And is that really what the law says? It's insurrection by extension?
I have never had, and I'm surprised listening to my learned friend. When you define insurrection under the law, it has no extension, because by that, it will mean that it will be subject to the whims and caprices of the person who is in power. Insurrection in law connotes two things. It must be violent, it must be an uprising to upturn a government, and then the violence of it must involve bearing arms. What is going on in the Southeast has nothing to do with insurrection. It's agitation, mobilizing opinion that is contrary to an established opinion or an established authority. And it's a peaceful one in the sense that nobody has been killed by Kanu. He actually started by saying, I want the government to conduct a referendum within the Southeast to determine whether they want to remain in this part called Nigeria. And I think that was a legitimate demand. If somebody says, I have carried out a survey, I know my people, there's a feeling for self-determination, there's an agitation for self-determination, so we want to conduct a referendum. That was the first thing he asked the government of Nigeria. And make no mistake about it, it's just the way Mr. Nnamdi is going on about this. Every citizen has a right to civil disobedience. Every citizen has a right to form an opinion that is different from the one established either by government or by any other authority. But you cannot on your own take the laws into your hands. And I don't think within the perimeters of what is going on in the Southeast now, I cannot tell you that Kanu has taken laws into his hands. Speeches do not constitute actions. You must weigh what he has done. He's already under trial for treasonable felony, for this insurrection, for wanting to levy war against Nigeria, for setting up a radio station. So he's under trial. If he has taken up any other action beyond the one for which he's been tried, he's entitled to be arraigned again and be tried. And once the federal government has activated the Federal High Court to revoke his bail, the Attorney General of the Federation has already initiated process to revoke his bail based on the fact that he has infringed upon the conditions of those bails. It is sufficient to await October when he will appear in court and find out whether there are enough evidence on the side of government to revoke that bail. But without waiting for the court to take a determination, an attempt to arrest him, an attempt to confine him, an attempt to do any other thing would be to present a situation of fait accompli before the court. It will be a situation of the federal government taking law into its hands now.
If we look at section 271, subsection C, that talks about the prescription by an act of the National Assembly, does that suggest then that Operation Python Dance is illegal?
Clearly, from all indications in law, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has no power to deploy soldiers to quell civil insurrection, to quell armed robbery, to quell assassinations, to quell kidnapping. There's no such power under our law. Section 217 of the Constitution clearly activates a situation whereby the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces is empowered by the National Assembly or an act, and in this case the act is the Armed Forces Act. Section 2176 is referring to the Armed Forces Act, which has detailed the powers of the President and then the functions of the military. Surely, by our law, there is no such power. And I'm not just speaking here. It's been interpreted. This section has been interpreted by the court, up to the Court of Appeal. Justice Aikawa, you remember what happened in Ekiti in 2014, when Dr. Goodluck Jonathan was in power, and soldiers were deployed to Ekiti for a governorship election. And the people who are in power now were in opposition then. And they went to the Federal High Court in Sokoto, and the Federal High Court Justice Aikawa delivered a landmark judgment interpreting Section 217, saying that the President has no power to deploy soldiers for civilian duties. And civilian duties will include election. It will include any other duty that the police is set up to enforce. And indeed, crime is primarily a responsibility of government. Okay, there was an appeal against that judgment, and eventually went to the Court of Appeal. And Justice Aboki in 2015 delivered a landmark judgment in the Court of Appeal, affirming the judgment of Justice Aikawa that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has no power to deploy soldiers for civilian or purposes, or even for ordinary matters that are covered by the regular law enforcement agencies. Thereafter, in Lagos again, in 2012, we embarked on a civil process by which we were challenging the president in respect of subsidy. I was on Pangrove with late Bamdela Turu, with NLC. We were moving from Yaba and moving on the streets to go to Ikeja to deliver a letter to the governor. And soldiers came and were shooting. And then soldiers were deployed all over Lagos. And Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila went to the Federal High Court in Lagos. Justice Buba delivered a landmark judgment also and said that the federal government has no power to deploy soldiers on the streets of Lagos for any other purpose other than Section 217C, which is about territorial integrity, insurrection, or that Nigeria is at some threat of aggression by an external force. And that's where the law stands today. So I don't think it is proper for anybody to say that the president has power to deploy soldiers.
What about Section 217C, where it talks about suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities?
That will be that there's a request from the civil authority. There's a request, and in this regard, for instance, you know, there's this OP MESA all over the Federation. There's a request by governors through the Commissioner of Police, through the Inspector General of Police, to the Chief of Army Staff or the authorities of the Army to complement the efforts of the police. They will be in the background. So there must be a request. It will not be the Chief of Army Staff himself that will wake up one day and say, I declare Operation Python Dance. And that Python dance will be that it will be seeking for kidnappers, and from kidnappers suddenly they will find themselves conducting exercise at the house of Kanu. That cannot be the case, sir.
But there are those who, maybe you should also interpret this for us, where they decide Section 218 and then they go all the way up until 3, where they say the president may, by directions in writing and subject to such conditions as he think fit, delegates to any member of the armed forces of the Federation his powers relating to the operational use of the armed forces of the Federation.
Well, if the president himself has no power to deploy soldiers to quell civil unrest, criminalities, what the person delegating the power cannot do, the person he is to delegate the power to cannot also do it.
So is this an abnormal...
So if the president has no power to deploy soldiers, he cannot delegate that power to the Chief of Army Staff or to the Chief of Defense Staff.
But it said here that direction in writing. If the president may, by directions in writing and subject to such conditions as he may think fit, delegate to any member of the armed forces of the Federation his powers relating to the operational use of the armed forces of the Federation.
The operational use of the armed forces is what has been outlined in Section 217. It's not at large. That operational use is what is enumerated in Section 217. Otherwise, the president will just wake up one day and ask soldiers to come and take up Chinese television. The purpose of that operational use must be that it is meant to quell external aggression. It is meant to quell, to protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria. It is meant to suppress insurrection. And that operational use will then go along with the established act of the National Assembly, which is the Armed Forces Act. And in the Armed Forces Act, there is nowhere the army is authorized to attack civilians, to attack armed robbers, to attack kidnappers, to attack assassinators. There's nowhere at all.